Hello and welcome to yet another Linux podcast. And today we've got the Dell G5 15 SE gaming laptop. It's got the Ryzen 5 4600H and it's got the Radeon RX 5600M. And today we're going to see how it works with Linux. As you can see, I've already got OpenSUSE installed on this. Where's my info center? There we go. So we've got our Ryzen 5 4600H. And yes, right now it's running on the integrated Renoir graphics, but we do have our Navi 10 GPUs just sitting quietly over there. All right, so I have been using this for about a week now. It does work pretty well. There are a few quirks. So one quirk is the brightness on the monitor doesn't work. Brightness controls, nada. I move the slider, nothing works. The keyboard brightness, I think that one works. Yeah, the keyboard brightness works. And the keyboard lighting also works. I don't have the RGB keyboard, I have the regular red LED backlit keyboard. Um, Another thing that you will need to do is you will need to disable the runtime power management on the Navi 10 graphics. Otherwise, it doesn't boot. I couldn't even get it to install without it. So, bootloader. Yeah, so you can see these are my command line parameters. I've got run. You have to have your AMD GPU.run PM as 0. Overclocking doesn't really work. You don't have to put this. I was trying to muck around with Wattman and with core control. That's why this is there, but otherwise it doesn't really work. Now, fan controls. They're a little janky. So for fan controls to work, you will need to load the Dell SMM kernel module. Yeah, you will need to load the Dell SMM HWMon kernel module. It is not loaded by default. You will have to set it in your mod profile. Yeah, so I swapped out the K10 temp for Zen power because it gives me better power control. Rather, it gives me readouts about the power usage as well. The K10 the K10 temp driver doesn't do that. It doesn't read the RAPL power management. You will need kernel 5.8 for the best out of the box experience. For instance, earlier kernels, even with the runtime run PM, you would have other problems. So we can see right now we're consuming about 13, 15 watts of power. So yes, you will need to set these parameters to get your sensors working. You can see my sensors over here. They're also up there. So with this, you actually do get fan controls. Otherwise, the only thing it does see is this fan 1 parameter from LM sensors, which doesn't work. By default, the automatic fan control does work fairly well, but it can get pretty hot, especially when running a game. So let's fire up some Heaven and see how that looks. So I'm running it on the discrete GPU. I'll run it at 1600 by 900. And as you can see, the clock speed, the GPU clock speed, it basically ramps all the way down to 450 megahertz and then it bounces. So I experimented with different fan speeds, CPU schedulers. it doesn't go much higher than 800. It doesn't go much higher than, say, 1 gigahertz. I saw it bounce up to, say, 1 gigahertz, and you can see my temperatures are already through the roof. That's because it doesn't ramp the fans up fast enough. So let's fix that, shall we? So for that I do echo 255 PWM1, and let's turn off the heaven sound so that we can hear the laptop's fan spinning up. Yeah, so this is the CPU fan that's spinning up. Um, I'll also spin up the GPU fan. Yep, that's them spinning up over there. And now our temperatures are going down. Although not by much. Yeah, this thing can get pretty hot. And oh yes, I'm on the schedule CPU power governor. To get it, if you want your temperatures further down, you CPU power frequency set. I recommend you set it to power save. This will ramp the speed down, obviously, to 1.4 gigahertz, but your temperatures will also take a good nosedive down to 70, 60, 65. Yeah, now that's much more manageable. I think the on-demand governor will also do it. Okay, the on-demand governor does get the temperatures up higher. Oh, up, up. Okay, come back down, come back down. I don't want this thing melting on me. Oh, that's cool. Okay, so the on-demand governor actually does bump the GPU clock speed. It's kind of weird, but I'm not sure why that is happening. Yeah, this does have some quirks on Linux, but for the most part, it does run really, really well. It is much faster than my desktop, which had an FX 6300. I don't have to deal with. I can record this now. I can record on OBS with the default X264 encoder rather than using HUF YUV and get like 300 gigabyte video files. Well, I can't store 300 gigabyte video files on this anyway because I have only the 512 gigabyte SSD. Oh, which reminds me, the NVMe SSD on this, super fast. I'm not sure if Smart Shift is actually working on Linux. I do know it works on Windows. On Windows, I do get better clock speeds, and the fans do have a little more fine-grained control on them, as in the Alienware software on Windows manages your fans for you. You don't have to manually set them here. I don't recommend, if you want it dead silent, you can turn the fans off. I don't recommend doing that. It can, your CPU can easily spike all the way up to 100 and then trigger an emergency shutdown. That happened once. And one more thing, do not use the i8K utilities with the Dell SMM hardware monitor. It doesn't work very well. Alright, so first up, let's see another OpenGL game. So this is Tomb Raider. It runs on OpenGL, the native Feral Interactive version. It runs at a steady 800 megahertz if I just run GLX gears, or there's no load on the GPU. But once there is a load, it ramps down. I found it a little weird at first. I was like, why is it ramping down? But then I realized, okay, maybe it is pretty thermally constrained. So we can see in the menu, we've got 800 megahertz. Now I haven't really run this on with OBS running in the background. I've noticed that when I've got OBS running and I've got something else and I've got a game open, these shader clocks do stabilize a bit. I'm guessing that is smart shift at work. I'm not sure though. But anyway, here we've got the built-in benchmark running, and yes, it's ramped down to 460 megahertz. And yes, this is actually running the 5600M. I will show you the Vega integrated performance in a moment on both Heaven and on Tomb Raider, and then we'll try some Batman. Okay, for the settings, I've basically turned everything on Ultra except for anti-aliasing and motion blur. Motion blur is off. Anti-aliasing is set to bilinear. And that's not bad actually for 1600 by 900, 48 frames per second. I wonder how it would be if it could really stretch its legs, but I don't have a cooling pad yet. Yeah. What are my game options? Graphics. Yeah, so I'm at 1600 by 900. VSync is off. And texture quality is ultra. Texture filter is at bilinear. Hair quality is on TressFX. Anti-aliasing is off. Shadows are ultra. Resolution is high. Everything is off. Everything is on high. Tessellation. I should have put that off. Oh well. Alright, first let's do Heaven again. So for that, yeah, there we go. I have to switch this. Yes, Mango Hut doesn't actually get a good, doesn't detect it automatically. You do have to set the PCI device for it to properly get what GPU it's running on. Now this is running on Renoir. And you can see that the Renoir GPU actually does run at a full 1.5 gigahertz. Oh, do not tell me I was still running. Okay, no. Okay, yeah. So this is the Renoir graphics. It runs at its full 1.5 gigahertz, but you can already tell that it is running on the integrated graphics because, yeah, this was a lot lower. The 5600M has way more shader units than this. This, I think, has only 6 Vega shader units, whereas the Navi 10 GPU, it's basically the desktop 5600 XT with much lower clock speeds. Now, let's switch Tomb Raider. So I set this to 0. Set this to 7. I'll put this up here in the corner. Oops. Okay. Let's move this a little more so that we can see our package power. Okay, we're hitting 40 watts. And yeah, you can tell that this is the Renoir GPU. I'll run the same benchmark, same everything. Yeah, that's pretty rough. Ooh, yeah. On the bright side, my temperatures are going down because the... Okay, not by that much. Okay, one more thing. Do not try to run benchmarks on both the integrated and the discrete graphics at the same time. It won't work. It will just freeze up your system. Worst case scenario, it would reboot. Okay, a reboot fixes it, but worst case scenario, it screws up the SMU. It won't be able to read the clock speeds. It would just, performance would just tank. Okay, so that was OpenGL. Let's try some Dxvk. One thing about Vulkan, it launches on the discrete GPU by default. You don't have to set DRI prime. But if you want to force it, you could use the Mesa Vulkan device select thing. While the fans are pretty high now, right now, and they are pretty loud, when you're just having it sitting at idle with the automatic fan controls, this thing is actually quite quiet. It's surprisingly quiet. There we go. Batman Arkham City. Yeah, so as we can see, it's running already on the Navi 10. Oh, I didn't put ACO. I didn't turn on ACO. Oh well. Okay, so for this, I'll just run the benchmark again. So we go through our options. Okay, on this I've actually set the tessellation to high. I think if I turn tessellation off, I get way better performance. But we are already... Ow! When we got a crash. Yeah. Okay, not a crash, but a stutter. But as you can see over here, the GPU clock's actually running at a pretty high rate. It's running at a full 800 megahertz. Okay, it's not full 800. This thing can actually go up to 1750 megahertz. But I've never actually seen it do that in a game. It can run that on in VK Cube for days on end, but I haven't really seen it hit 1750 megahertz in a game. And I doubt it will because it's pretty thermally constrained. Whoa, can boil some water on this. Okay, benchmark is complete. So we've got an average of 59 frames per second. That's not bad actually. The stutter didn't happen the last time I ran this when I wasn't recording OBS. Of course, at that time also the computer hadn't had enough time to warm up, so that could have also been a factor. Oh, okay, I have the mango heard up. Yeah, see? We're getting over 800 megahertz in this. Okay, I don't remember in what state I had left the game in. Hopefully we won't have to endure long cutscenes. One thing about Assassin's Creed, lots of cutscenes. Oh, okay, so I'm at the initial part. I've just left Solomon's Temple, and I have to go to Masyaf. Right. So, while I am in the game, I'm running at a good 800 megahertz. And just walking around, I'm getting about 55 frames per second. Oh, but my CPU is burning up. It's burning up. Okay, I won't play too much of this. Whoops.
You look familiar. Please be more careful.
Final thoughts. The Dell G5 15 SE has some problems on Linux, but it is not unusable by any means. While gaming performance still needs work thanks to some strange GPU clock speed ramping, most games are perfectly playable and the discrete GPU is still much faster than the integrated Vega graphics. These teething issues should resolve themselves soon enough, with AMD Linux developers well aware of the quirks and with constant updates to the Linux kernel and MISA. If you can get your hands on one, then by all means try Linux on it. If you don't, however, don't nuke the Windows installation just yet, and be mindful of its current quirks. Links in the description below, links to the bug reports and various other AMD support forums are in the description below. If you like my content and wish to see more Linux tests and benchmarks on the Dell G5 15 SE, then please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. I also have a Patreon page if you would like to support my channel in these trying times. Thank you, and I shall see you in the next video. Okay, and now we are at the spot the benchmark runs at.